I am Zara, and I found an amulet that allowed me to control time. The discovery happened on a day that seemed like any other in the sleepy village of Mombasa. Curious by nature and always looking for adventure, I decided to explore an ancient sacred cave, a place that has always fascinated me but that many avoided out of respect or fear of the stories that surrounded it. Upon entering the cave, I felt a different, almost magical atmosphere. My footsteps echoed off the cold, damp walls as my torchlight flickered, casting dancing shadows. It was then that, in a more distant and hidden corner, I saw something shining. I approached and, to my surprise, found an ancient amulet, intricately designed and with a central stone that seemed to pulse with an energy of its own. That amulet feels so special, I muttered to myself, feeling an immediate and inexplicable connection. Without hesitation, I took the amulet and took it to the wisest person I knew, my grandmother, Nia. She was a respected elder in the village, known for her wisdom and knowledge of ancient artifacts and legends. "Grandma Nia, look what I found in the sacred cave," he said, almost breathless, as he entered his small house. She looked up from her embroidery, and upon seeing the amulet, her eyes widened in surprise and recognition. "Zara, you found the amulet of time," she said in a voice full of reverence. "This amulet has the power to control time. Long ago, it was created by our ancestors to protect the village, but no one has seen it for generations." My heart raced. The idea of controlling time was both frightening and fascinating. "What should I do with him, Grandma?" "First, you must be very careful," she advised. "Time is a powerful force, and playing with it can have unexpected consequences. Let's test it with caution." Determined to better understand the amulet's powers, I went to a quiet place and concentrated. Closing my eyes, I imagined a moment in the past that had always tormented me, the fire that destroyed the village library, a place I loved and where I spent hours immersed in books. When I opened my eyes, I was back to that fateful day. The heat from the fire was already starting to spread, but this time I was prepared. I ran to the library and managed to put out the flames before they consumed everything. Feeling a rush of satisfaction, I returned to the present, eager to see the changes. However, I quickly realized that small changes in the past had complex repercussions in the present. The library was saved, but many of the events that occurred after the fire did not happen in the same way. People who had connected because of the tragedy now didn't have the same bonds. Friends who came together to rebuild the library now went their separate ways. "Grandma, I think I made a mistake," I confessed upon returning home. "I saved the library, but now it feels like I've messed with people's lives too much." Nia smiled, understanding. "Zara, time is like a river. Even the smallest stone can alter its course. Learning to use the amulet is a process. You need to understand that avoiding a tragedy can create other consequences." These words echoed in my mind. I knew I had a lot to learn about the power I now possessed. However, the thrill of being able to correct past mistakes and shape a better future was irresistible. So, with Nia's support and the insatiable curiosity that has always guided me, I decided to continue this journey, aware that my actions would have profound impacts and that each decision would need to be made with wisdom and care. I am Zara, and finding that amulet was like a call of fate. The feeling of power he gave me was both intoxicating and frightening. After my first time travel, where I managed to save the village library, I felt a huge responsibility to use this power for good. The idea of correcting past mistakes seemed like the ideal way to honor this gift. One of the first things I decided to do was go back in time to prevent the death of Jabari, a young warrior whose loss had left his family and community deeply shaken. Jabari was a symbol of hope and strength for all of us. His death, which occurred in a treacherous ambush, had changed the course of many lives in the village. With the amulet in hand, I traveled back to that fateful day. I remember seeing Jabari, strong and fearless, walking towards his destiny. I knew exactly what I needed to do. "Jabari, wait!" I shouted, running towards him. He turned, surprised to see a young woman he barely knew, but something in my urgency made him stop. "Who are you?" he asked, confused. "It doesn't matter now. You're in danger. Please trust me and come this way," I insisted, showing him a safe shortcut. He looked at me suspiciously, but ended up following me. We managed to avoid the ambush, and Jabari returned to the village, alive and well. The joy I felt seeing him reunite with his family was indescribable. I had done good, or so I thought. I returned to the present, eager to see the fruits of my intervention. However, I soon realized that things were not as I expected. Jabari's presence had created a series of new problems. Their survival altered the political dynamics of the village, creating unexpected tensions and conflicts. Instead of uniting, his presence was dividing. "Zara, we need to talk," said Kwame, my childhood friend and confidant, in a serious tone. "Things are not going well. Jabari's survival is causing conflicts with the other village leaders." "But I just wanted to help," I replied, feeling the weight of guilt in my words. "I know," Kwame said, placing a comforting hand on my shoulder, "but maybe messing with the past isn't the solution. Every action has its consequences, and we can't predict them all." His words resonated deeply with me. The intention to help was pure, but the reality was more complex than I imagined. Jabari's presence created a power struggle between him and another influential leader, Kofi. The village was on the brink of civil conflict. At a meeting of elders, the tension was palpable. "We cannot allow these disputes to continue," said Nia, my grandmother, firmly. "We must find a way to restore harmony." "Zara, I know your intentions were good," Kofi said, looking directly at me, "but we need to deal with the consequences of your actions." I felt lost, but determined to find a solution. "Maybe I can fix this," I said, clutching the amulet in my hands. "Maybe I can go back and undo what I did." Kwame shook his head. "What if it makes things worse? We need to think carefully about how we use this power." Those words stayed with me. I understood that the real challenge was not just in correcting the past, but in learning to deal with the consequences of our actions. Returning to the past to undo Jabari's salvation was a painful decision, but perhaps necessary to restore peace. With a heavy heart, I decided to take another trip back in time. I met again on the day of the ambush, but this time, I didn't interfere. I let the natural course of events unfold. Upon returning, I felt a mixture of sadness and relief. The village was at peace, and I had learned a valuable lesson about responsibility and acceptance. "Zara, you did what needed to be done," said Nia, hugging me lovingly. "The true power of the amulet is to teach us to accept time and grow with it." The journey was far from over, but I was ready to face whatever came, with wisdom and humility. When I realized that my attempts to correct the past were causing more problems than they were solving, I decided to change my strategy. It was time to look to the future and try to prevent disasters before they happened. I knew I needed to be more careful and thoughtful in my actions. The amulet allowed me a glimpse of what was to come, but it also showed me that changing the future could be as dangerous as changing the past. One night, while meditating alone in my room, holding the amulet, I had a clear vision. A devastating drought was about to hit our village. Crops withered, rivers dried up, and people suffered from a lack of water and food. The image was so vivid that it made me wake up in a cold sweat. The next morning, I went straight to my grandmother, Nia's house. "Grandma, we need to talk," he said, with urgency in his voice. She looked at me with her wise eyes, noticing the desperation on my face. "What happened, Zara?" he asked, gently placing his hand on mine. "I had a terrible vision. A drought is about to devastate our village. We need to prepare, I replied, struggling to remain calm. Nia nodded slowly, absorbing my words. So, let's get to work. We need to bring the village together and implement measures to stock up on water and food. But remember, Zara, we need to do this wisely so as not to create dependency. Our people need to learn to trust their own abilities as well. With Nia and Kwame's help, we began to organize the village. We called an assembly to inform everyone about what was coming. Kwame, ever the pragmatist, helped develop a detailed plan to build efficient water reservoirs and irrigation systems. We need to start immediately, said Kwame, looking at the gathered people. Each of us has an important role to play. If we work together, we can overcome this drought. The villagers, initially skeptical, began to collaborate. For weeks, we worked tirelessly, digging wells, building water tanks, and stocking up on food. I used the amulet to monitor progress and adjust our strategies as needed. Finally, the drought arrived. The rains stopped, and the heat increased. The crops began to wither, but thanks to our efforts, the village was prepared. We had enough water to survive and food supplies to last us until the drought passed. However, over time, I noticed something worrying. People started to depend too much on my predictions. Whenever a problem arose, they came to me looking for answers and solutions. It was as if they had lost confidence in their own abilities and wisdom. One afternoon, Kwame came looking for me. He looked worried. Zara, we need to talk, he said, pulling me to a quiet corner of the village. I know your intentions are good, but I've noticed that people are becoming dependent on you. This is not healthy for the village. I felt a knot form in my stomach. I knew he was right. I noticed it too, Kwame. That wasn't what I wanted. I just wanted to help, but maybe I went too far. Nia, who was nearby, came over and put her hand on my shoulder. Zara, what you did was incredible, but there is an important lesson here. The true power of the amulet is not in controlling time, but in teaching us to accept and learn from it. Experiences, good or bad, make us grow. I reflected on her words and knew she was right. I decided it was time to stop depending on the amulet and start trusting more in the potential of the people in the village. I brought everyone together again and explained my decision. From now on, I will no longer make predictions. We need to learn to face challenges together, using our own wisdom and skills. The villagers, although initially apprehensive, began to understand and accept. After all, our strength has always been in our unity and ability to overcome adversity together. So I kept the amulet, understanding that true power lies in accepting time and learning from it. And with that, our village flourished, stronger and more united than ever. I am Zara, and the journey with the amulet that allowed me to control time was far from simple. I had learned a lot from my adventures and, despite good intentions, I began to realize that messing with time had consequences that I couldn't predict. However, what I didn't know was that a web of intrigue and manipulation was unfolding around me, and at the center of it all was a Baisai, an elder I considered a friend and mentor. It all started to make sense on a particularly dark day. I was talking to my grandmother, Nia, in the little cabin we shared. She was weaving a basket, her nimble fingers moving with a skill that only years of experience could provide. Grandma, I'm starting to think my actions aren't helping the village like I thought, I confessed, sitting down next to her. Nia looked at me with her wise and serene eyes. Sometimes, Zara, the path to good is full of rocks and thorns. But don't despair, time has a way of revealing the truth. These words kept echoing in my mind. Later that night, as I walked through the village, I passed Kwame, my childhood friend. He looked worried and took me aside. Zara, we need to talk. "There's something I discovered that I think you need to know," he said, urgency in his voice. We walked to a more isolated area of the village. Kwame hesitated for a moment, but then began to speak. I looked into some things, and I realized that many of the problems that arose after his interventions were, in fact, being manipulated by someone. "What do you mean, Kwame? Manipulated by who?" I asked, feeling a chill run down my spine. "Abasai," he replied, looking me straight in the eyes. "He has been influencing events in a way that seems to be taking advantage of every change you make in time." I was in shock. Abasai was always a respected elder, someone I considered fair and honest. "Is this serious, Kwame? Are you sure?" "Yes, Zara. He has been secretly meeting with influential people in the village, and some of these meetings coincide with the times when things started to go wrong. We decided to confront Abasai that same night. We went to his house, a simple but imposing building. I knocked on the door, my heart beating fast. Abasai opened it, looking surprised to see us. "Zara, Kwame, what brings you here at this time of night?" he asked, his voice calm. "We need to talk to you, Abasai," he said, trying to remain calm. "We have discovered that you have been manipulating events in the village for your own benefit." For a moment, a flash of surprise crossed his face, but it was soon replaced by a condescending smile. "Ah, Zara, always so impulsive. Do you really think you know what you're doing? We know you planted the amulet in the cave, knowing I would find it," I replied. "And that he has used my interventions to consolidate power and influence." Abasai laughed, a cold, humorless sound. "You guys are smarter than I thought. Yes, I planned all of this. But you don't understand, the village needs strong leadership, someone who can guide them to a better future. But not at the expense of truth and manipulation," I exclaimed, feeling anger rising inside me. "Zara, what do you think you're doing with that amulet? You're also manipulating time, playing goddess," he retorted, his voice now filled with contempt. I was trying to help, but now I see that the real problem is not time, but those who try to control it for their own ends, I declared, feeling a new determination. Abasai looked at me, his eyes shining with a mixture of anger and respect. "If you think you can undo everything I did, good luck, Zara. But remember, every action has a reaction." With those words, Abasai turned and walked into his house, leaving me there, reflecting on what had just happened. I knew the battle was far from over, but I now had new clarity about the true challenge I faced. And she was ready to face him, not with the power of the amulet, but with the strength of truth and justice. I am Zara, and I found an amulet that allowed me to control time. This discovery changed my life in ways I could never have imagined. It all started when, on a hot, sunny afternoon, I decided to explore a sacred cave on the outskirts of our village, Mombasa. The cave was known for its mysteries and ancient legends, and I was always drawn to its stories. As I walked through the cave, something glowed in a dark corner. As I approached, I saw an ancient amulet, full of symbols that I didn't recognize. I felt an immediate connection with the object and, without hesitation, took it home. My grandmother, Nia, a wise and respected elder in the village, was surprised to see the amulet. "Zara, where did you find this?" she asked, her eyes wide with surprise. "In the sacred cave, grandmother. It was there, as if it was waiting for me," I replied, still fascinated by the glow and energy emanating from the amulet. Nia explained to me that the amulet had the power to control time, a secret kept for generations. Deciding to test its powers, I held the amulet and focused on a specific moment in the past, the fire that had destroyed the village library. Suddenly I felt dizzy, and when I opened my eyes, I was in the past. I managed to avoid the fire, but upon returning to the present, I realized that small changes in the past had unexpected consequences. Determined to use my new powers for good, I decided to right other wrongs of the past. I prevented the death of Jabari, a young warrior whose absence had caused great suffering to his family. However, upon returning, the village's political dynamics had changed, creating unexpected tensions and conflicts. Kwame, my ever-loyal childhood friend, began to question whether my actions were really helping the village. "Zara, are you sure you're doing the right thing?" asked Kwame, worried. "I just want to help, Kwame. But it seems like every time I try to fix something, I create new problems," I replied, frustrated. Over time, I realized that predicting and avoiding future disasters also had its consequences. I discovered that a devastating drought was about to hit the village and, with the help of Nia and Kwame, I implemented measures to stock up on water and food. The village was spared from the drought, but the villagers began to rely too much on my predictions, losing confidence in their own abilities and wisdom. As I struggled with the consequences of my actions, I discovered that Abasai, an elder who always appeared friendly, was manipulating events for his own benefit. He had planted the amulet in the cave, knowing I would find it, and was using my interventions to consolidate power and influence in the village. Feeling betrayed, I decided to confront him. "Abasai, why did you do that?" I asked, indignantly. "You are so naive, Zara. It was always about power. I knew you would use the amulet and that I could manipulate your actions for my own ends," he replied, a malevolent smile on his face. In the final confrontation, Abasai revealed that he also possessed a similar amulet, and the two entered into a time manipulation battle. In a moment of clarity, I realized that the true value of time is not in controlling it, but in learning from it. I used my amulet to undo all my changes in the past and future, accepting that experiences, good and bad, are essential for growth and wisdom. "What are you doing, Zara?" Abasai shouted, in despair at seeing his manipulations undone. "I'm correcting my mistake, Abasai. Time must follow its natural course," I declared, determined. With Abasai stripped of his amulet, he was exposed and banished from the village. Now, wiser, I decided to keep the amulet, understanding that true power lies in accepting and learning over time. The journey was arduous, but the lessons learned were invaluable. I, Zara, now knew that time should not be controlled, but lived and appreciated in all its complexity and beauty.